good morning. I'm here with a wonderful gentleman called Edward Pike, who I've known for a number of years. And Edward does some pretty remarkable work as a mentor in the holistic field. Um, he's a very interesting person because he has actually overcome many, many obstacles in his path to do what he does today, which is to help many, many people. Um, Edward,
Right.
you've been a holistic facilitator for a decade now, but you actually set up your foundation, which is called the Thrive Foundation, after a pretty huge life awakening. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey that actually led you to creating this foundation?
Yeah, of course. Um, I've always had a bit of a strong connection to spirit, let's say. Like even as a kid, I used to go to Christian camps and have a real strong sense of spirituality and a wider presence. And in 2009, I was living in Manchester, and I was at one of the lowest points in my life, like quite depressed and isolated and alone. I'd been traveling the world a lot and kind of living in a mask of, life is great, life is happy, and then landed into reality or in a job I didn't like, in a place I didn't like. And it was a very painful time. And on the back of that, there was a moment just as I was about to leave Manchester to actually follow something I wanted to do, which was personal training in London. That same week of moving to London, I got diagnosed with HIV. And I remember the moment exactly. It was, when the room kind of slows down and time really slowed down, and I really felt this strong like presence here, this holding that I'd experienced years ago before when I was kind of experiencing spirituality through these Christian camps that my aunt and uncle had taken me to. I wasn't religious at all. I'd kind of lost this connection, but in that moment, there was this real sense of presence that was there, and I just knew that it was right, that it was okay, that it was all going to be okay, and that it would be fine. And that was kind of in hindsight, of course, it's easy to look at the dots in hindsight, but in hindsight, that was one of the big moments of my life, of course, and it triggered
Yeah.
a lot of things. It
Mm.
woke a lot of things. It triggered a lot of pain, a lot of emotions. It brought me down a path of destructiveness at first, but then also through that destructiveness and isolation, like a real transformation into where I am today. And like a few months, yeah, a week after I got diagnosed, I moved to London, and nearly immediately I started as a personal trainer. I met like a healer and a coach, and he kind of awoke me to this other way of seeing the world, which really resonated. Talked a lot about energy, talked a lot about consciousness, and I was like, oh, this really resonates. And at the same time, there was a real, like a year or so of very destructive behaviors. I was partying a lot, I was taking drugs, yeah, it was very, very isolating as well as destructive. And so I was on this kind of dual path for like
Mm.
at least a year and a half. And in hindsight, there was a lot of shame and guilt and fear that were triggered by the diagnosis. And in hindsight, I can even say that those were already dormant, present before the diagnosis. And the
Yeah.
diagnosis was this trigger. And I did my best to like avoid and deny and hide all of those things that had been triggered through all these destructive behaviors. But after a while, this other element of myself, my heart, or the part of me that was deeply awoken into this world of energy and healing,
Mm.
kind of took the lead, kind of became more and more powerful and started to lead me and started to take me on this journey of transformation. It was a few years down the line, I became a personal trainer and I was helping people. You know, I was really curious about why myself and others we swing so much in our health habits. Like, why do we don't take care of ourselves? Why am I not taking care of myself? And yeah, I know all of this. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a personal trainer, so I should be like, this image of perfection, and yet there's still these destructive behaviors going on inside. So I was really curious about that, and that led me down a very spiritual path of dropping into working with a lot more with. Well, at first it was just the intuition. What is the deeper self saying, and why can we not stay in alignment with that deeper self? What's happening?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and a few years down the line, I think it was 2014, 2015. It led me to just have this conversation. Basically I moved my care from one clinic to 5016th Street in Soho, which have been amazing,
Mm.
and they're an amazing clinic. And I'd had a conversation with one of the people there, the person in charge of the well-being program. I'm like, oh, maybe I could do something for people living with HIV,
Yeah.
around the holistic care, around the well-being, the mental health, the emotional health. And and then a few months later we got funding from Awards for All, and we started. I connected with a good friend of mine who runs a charity, and we did it for the charity. And you know, a year, 2 years later, we then took it out of that charity and created its own foundation, the Thrive Foundation. And we're now in our second year as a foundation. We've run three programs, three 6-month programs, which have had an amazing impact with those that have attended it. And yeah, that's kind of the path. That's where it all started, was that diagnosis in 2009. It's already like 8 years.
Wow, wow. And your foundation, I know, is doing some pretty amazing work for other people who've also been diagnosed with HIV. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So our whole mission, if you want, is a world of where people can thrive with their diagnosis and can
Mm.
use the diagnosis as a catalyst for change. So it brings up so much stuff, and there's a bit of misunderstanding of illness full stop in the world right now. We see it as a very negative thing, and we only see it from a very physical standpoint when we look at it from a more holistic view, and you know this, of course, as well. Illness is a messenger, and any illness is a messenger. It's the body saying, "Hey, hang on a minute. You're really out of alignment with your real self, with your deeper, with your connected self, with the universe, with your flow, with your love, with your light." And Thrive is based on that understanding from my experience from working with all these people. And at the beginning, it brings up so much stuff, and right now
Mm.
the NHS doesn't have the provision to provide this kind of space for people. They're struggling to with all their funding, and they're struggling to even deliver basic mental health support.
Yeah,
So this is really a grassroots organization that's filling the gap of deep support for people, uh,
mm-hmm.
using yeah diving into all these fears. I don't belong, I'm going to die, I never find a partner. I mean, this shame, guilt, all of these things that get triggered by this
Yeah,
thing, because it's so close to sex. I mean, HIV is very much about self-love and sexuality. It's so deep and so close to our wounds that it brings them all up to the surface.
yeah,
we we're here to give a space for that, to hold that and to say, yes, we know it's really painful, and let's go there. Let's dive into it, and let's use that as a messenger, as a gift to change, to transform. And yeah, and change does happen a lot faster because there's that space. If we're resisting it, then it just stays, and we destroy it, we avoid it, we can run from it. Life always, of course, has a way of bringing it to our attention, but we can you can keep destroying ourselves. The rate of suicide in people who've been diagnosed is very high. Depression, anxiety, isolation,
yes,
lots of destructive behaviors. Lots of people. I don't know if it's changed, but in the year after their diagnosis, they would go completely like AWOL, and they would go destructive, and you know
yeah,
into what we call the chemsex world, which is sex on drugs, and drugs and drug taking. It was a very destructive thing, at least in the LGBT community. That was not entirely sure how that is for other
yeah,
communities, but it was very destructive in that sense.
yeah.
And we give that space, we give that love, we give tools and the knowledge for them to also dive into themselves.
Beautifully said. Dive into yourself. I mean, your work is very profound, Edward, honestly. Um, and I've known you for a number of years and I've seen your progress. And it's just so wonderful to see your face, which is beaming away and touchwood looking really, really healthy as well. And I can see the amount of self-work that you've done for yourself and also for other people. Today is a very important day, actually, which is why we chose to have this interview. It is World AIDS Day.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's a subject that's being honoured around the world. And obviously, we know that for, a couple of decades now, people have been stigmatizing AIDS without really fully understanding it. But as we know, HIV is just really where the body's natural defenses break down, right? And there's been a lot of research and papers delivered on how natural means can actually assist with it being something that can be healed. Um, I mean, I just saw a film recently, which was the Dallas Buyers Club, which was, of course, a very um, animated film, but it was a very important film, and it was pretty much based on fact about how the American Drug Administration, were monitoring who could take what.
Mm.
And this guy came up with some natural methods. And really, what they understood was that it's really about taking your body and its health to the next level in order to be able to suppress this ultimately and to go through that transformation. I mean, what are your thoughts, Edward, on HIV being something that can actually be eradicated ultimately?
Yeah, that's a great question. On a, of course, on a higher consciousness level, anything is possible, and I think there are a few cases of it being in remission and disappearing. And there's a lot of talk of, cure or vaccine coming up in the next few years. So, in that sense, I really feel things are moving. I also know that from my own experience, that the more work that we do on ourselves, the healthier we do become, like you said, and the more we transform all the density in the mind and the body. We transform the shame, the guilt, the fear, the depression back into its original state, which is love, light, consciousness, which is purity of essence. Then it has an impact on the physical body. Like I've seen that in myself. Like I'm not on medication, but I'm as healthy as if I were on medication.
Yes.
And now there's, you know, if it's ever going to disappear completely, I don't know. I have no expectation of that. That would be, of course, be a beautiful thing, but it's not something that I used to have expectation. I was really holding on to that something. Yes, I can heal it, but right now I have no really expectation on that, apart from the desire to be joyful and healthy and staying present with that throughout. But what's really important, which I've really discovered, and what we're doing a lot with Thrive, is um, talking with the current services, talking with doctors and health advisors and nurses. There's some amazing people in the NHS, really healers. They are given a bit of a wrong set of tools to work with because they're just given the physical aspect of ourselves to work with. So
Yes.
they are given like a very limited aspect of the human being, which is why it's also quite complicated to work with illness. It keeps moving, the science, it keeps changing because people really have no idea of what it is. And it's like treating someone's hand, instead of looking at the whole body. So they're just looking at the physical aspect. So there's a bit of limitation in how how there's an understanding of illness for sure. So that I think was where our work also comes in. It's about supporting these people that have a beautiful understanding of the physical being, of the physical body, the physical container. But it's about bringing kind of another set of tools and understandings to the table to go, hey, this is, let's work together. There's something here that is manifesting, and this is what they're calling, when the the merging again of spirit and matter. When we split so much spirit matter, we split science and spirituality, we split masculine and feminine. We're coming to this space of unity and consciousness and oneness again, and this is part of it. It's part of integrating these two aspects, the physical and the non-physical. And what we're doing is very much about the non-physical. We work in a very shamanic way, drumming circles, movement, dance, journeying, meditation, lots of sharing, lots of talking, a very kind of tribal feel especially in the 6 month program, but even in the wider sense of the community. We work a lot with creativity, performance. We have an open mic night tomorrow night, actually,
Beautiful.
allowing people to express themselves, to create,
Mm.
to become more of a channel for their essence, their creativity. So it's very much, of course, it's very physical, but it also has a very non-physical layer to it, and it's very, very important for us that people are very much in connection with the medical side of things as well. So they're
Yeah.
very much in connection with their clinical advisors, with their medication, whatever they
Hmm.
need in that respect is honored as well as the
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
So you're basically really making everything holistic, as the name suggests, just bringing it all in together and making it something where you can look at all different aspects of it, which creates a much more unified understanding of the area, right? Which is a beautiful thing to do. I mean, you talk about sort of shamanic drumming and open mic sessions and meditation, and in fact, things that people generally should be doing in their lives just to keep their health flowing. So it's nothing that's particularly unique, but what you have done is you have brought in all these practices which we seem to have lost touch with out there as the consumers in a sort of 3D world, completely swamped by technology and our devices and all sorts of stuff. And you're bringing everything down to a very earthy level, and also working with allopathic doctors and nurses to give a complete picture. And I think that that's really wonderful. And I think that the kind of practice you're doing is being adopted around the world more and more. And it's beautiful to see. It's something that definitely people who even don't have HIV should really learn about, because everyone's health is at risk ultimately. You know, you just might be sitting in an office all day behind a computer and never actually getting to feel the earth under your feet or to do any of these practices, and you end up getting cancer. So what's the difference ultimately? Yeah, it's about how you can live in the now and how you can fully take care of your health. But, coming back to this subject of HIV and today being World AIDS Day, um, obviously your experience to date may not have been a completely flowing one in terms of maybe your happiness. And I'm sure, particularly as you were going through this journey after having discovered it, that you may have encountered people's lack of understanding as to what HIV really is. What sort of experiences have you had, Edward, around this? Have you ever found yourself being treated differently by others once they have discovered that
Mm.
this is the situation that you're in?
Um, yes and no. Yes and no. So I've been quite blessed in that I've never experienced really intense rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Like I work with some people who have experienced, people running away, the moment it's mentioned, and facing a lot of fear. I do believe that that's something that, we also create ourselves, to, if there's a deep fear or wound of rejection inside of us, then we will create situations that mirror that.
Yes.
I was lucky not to experience a very intense rejection. I actually experienced, a bit of, it was more with boyfriends or lovers, who couple who had a fear of it themselves, and being together and being intimate, and it did change a bit the dynamic. It doesn't make things as free. There's always the question,
Yeah.
there's always bits of not doubt. It's come something that over time you stop thinking about. It becomes part of your subconscious.
Yes.
At times it does come up as oh yes, we do have to have that conversation. We do have to, see how you're feeling, and yeah, another dynamic that sets in. But it's like anything really, it just becomes
Mm-hmm.
part of it. So in that context, yes, with partners mainly. With family, no. With family and friends, I would actually say that it's been a catalyst for connection. And
Yes.
me sharing myself and being vulnerable to share with people, on a one-to-one basis, with my family, with friends, has actually been in that moment a doorway to something, to connecting at a deeper level.
Yeah.
There's really magic that happens and when we can share ourselves, be so vulnerable. And in my experience, it's it's been received beautifully.
Mm.
And had friends who, and this is the other side of the coin, a few friends who I didn't tell, who were hurt that I didn't tell them. So there's different ways that it's worked, but it's actually been a catalyst for yeah for connection with most people. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't. I know people do experience stigma, and stigma is really a big word for just a distorted perception, a misunderstanding of what
Yes.
it is. It's an image that people hold in their minds and their subconscious. I held it the minute I was diagnosed. I remember seeing in the family doctor's waiting room when I was a kid this like comic book of this, especially this beautiful blonde girl who gets HIV somehow and then dies alone in a squat. And it was like the worst thing to bring up. But that's the perception that people have carried from the AIDS crisis, you know, and that's
Yes.
something that's been in our unconscious collective for a while. So when it is when we are diagnosed, for me, that was one of the things that did arise, that unconscious collective image of what it is. So that's also what we're kind of facing up to, but in a collective, but it's the really a mirror to our own individual image. You know, so each individual has a very different journey with it. Now the image is changing because medication means that no one really is dying from it. Anyone on medication is untransmissible, meaning they can't, even if they had sex with a condom, they couldn't pass on the virus. So it's, and PrEP now means that I was at Dean Street the other day and they used to diagnose about 60 people a month. And because of PrEP, which is something that people can take, people who are negative can take, and meaning that they don't get it, that's down to 4 a month in Dean Street. So the rate of transmission is dropping drastically.
Wow.
That's really changing. So there is a real change, a shift.
Mm.
As we're shifting a collective, we're also shifting our understanding. And some people say that, as a spirit, HIV has, as an energy, as a consciousness, has kind of played its role. It's woken us. It's done. It's moved us forwards as a collective, and it's now kind
Mm.
of in the end of the need for it.
Yeah, no, that's very, very interestingly expressed. I mean, Princess Diana, I remember, bless her, when she was alive, she did help to shift the consciousness quite a lot when she visited a hospital and she took the hands of somebody who had full-blown AIDS, and everybody was really shocked, and she didn't wear a glove or anything on her hand. And I thought that that was very, very powerful because that really took the message out there that, we have nothing to be frightened of, and we need to understand what this actually is. And it's not something that you walk into a room and you can contract it, by sitting next to somebody who has it, which unfortunately in the sort of 90s and the early part of this decade of the, let's say from 2000 onwards, people had that kind of fear. But thank goodness now for social media and so much more research and people like yourself who are really sharing the truth out there
Mm.
and you really breaking that stigma, which is so, so important. Um, I mean, what are the biggest personal challenges, let's say, or the personal changes in yourself, Edward, that you've realized over the last few years actually working with others to help their
Mm.
particular healing? Because obviously you've done a lot of inner work.
Yeah. Well, serving others is always a dance,
Yeah. Hmm.
dance. So it's always a beautiful mirror to where we're at as practitioners. And
Yeah.
it happens now, even in private sessions, like, something arises in a client, and it's obviously where I'm also stepping into, or I'm stepping into something, and it arises as
Mm.
it's really a dance. And I noticed that also with Thrive and the groups that I was serving. So we've done three Thrive programs, which are 6 month closed groups
Hmm.
for 6 to 10 people. We also run like 1 day workshops, and we're starting doing these afternoon circles of drumming, meditation, and journeying next year, and these open mics and community nights as well. And like the Thrive programs have been one of the most transformative things for the participants, but also for myself on all levels.
Yeah.
On serving others, of course,
Yeah.
who are in the same boat as I am, and really learning to listen to their stories and their experiences of it. And it's been a big transformation, I think, in perhaps understanding is the word, a big understanding of all the different journeys and stories that come with an HIV diagnosis. I have my own experience of it. I was lucky, for example, not to experience much with rejection. And then some people have come with experiencing everyday rejection, every single lover, every single partner,
Mm.
rejection. And of course, it's something that we have to work with them individually because that's obviously something carried with inside. But
Yeah.
I've really learned to just be, yeah, really open and learning a lot from other people's journeys and feeling very, very blessed and grateful for my family, for example, and my circle of friends, and
Yes.
the way that spirit has orchestrated, this for me, which was very painful and destructive for sure.
Yeah.
some point, but it was also through that brought a lot of beauty. So I really began to value also, how as human beings we learn so much from each other. We
Mm,
learn so much. There can be my work. This I might be the facilitator of the circle, but I'm always part of the circle. I'm always going through the process as a collective.
yes,
It's been really deeply transformative to
yeah,
do that, with people living with HIV.
yeah.
What comes to mind also is that in the last Thrive program, so the first two Thrive programs were specific to, the first Thrive program was specific to gay men recently diagnosed. Then we opened that up to gay men diagnosed over breadth of years. And the last Thrive program was open to anyone living with HIV, because that was a beautiful learning was we had two women in the last Thrive program and five men, and just hearing the exact same stories or etc., just with a kind of different kind of tinge from a woman was really powerful to as a gay man and as gay men to recognize that it's not just a gay thing. It's a very, of course, the LGBT community and gay men specifically that have had the highest rates of transmission and diagnosis, followed I think by Afro-American men or women. So there's kind of, there's a big tribe, if you want, a big community of people. And we're now, Thrive, we're opening up, we've opened up, to receive anyone living with HIV, no matter the age, the race, the sexual preference, the gender. We're really open, or the age of diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because there's so much learning that comes from each other. Someone who's been diagnosed a week and someone who's been diagnosed 30 years, there's so much, both can teach each other something. And so that's been one of the biggest learnings actually is recognizing that, and as a byproduct, seeing how as human beings, we all might look so different and feel so different on the surface, but just beneath the surface, we're very similar with the
We're
same.
all one,
Yeah, exactly.
and we're all the same.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And tell me, what are your hopes for the future, and are there any things that you'd like to personally achieve beyond this amazing work that you're already doing?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm in the process of kind of capturing all this in a book, that
Mm,
which is really a dance of the my journey with it, but also kind of the path itself that I've taken, and kind of giving that into others to follow it, when if they choose to.
mm,
In terms of wider things, what we're looking at with Thrive, for example, is to start to have a bit of an impact on the way HIV is looked at from a governmental and clinical level, and to look at how it's seen, how it's treated, how it's understood. And on a personal level, there's a clear calling that's coming, and I've no idea how or when or what it's going to materialize, but it's been coming many times into visions, and yeah, and a real calling to take this out now, to
mm,
to take this work to Africa, to take this work to other places around the world, to perhaps make a documentary about it and how it impacts others around the world, and meeting other people who are doing similar stuff around the planet. There's organizations, for example, I think it's in Zimbabwe, who work with HIV through dance and meditation. There's other organizations in many countries that work through with mindfulness and different things. So there's a lot of this stuff happening.
yeah.
I have this real longing to kind of start to connect the dots a bit, start to connect
Mm,
different people and places that are doing wonderful work, and really introduce it so we can, yeah, start to share their message and start to reform it and change our perception of it, and see how we can dance with illness, and even an illness as deeply wounding as HIV can
mm.
actually have a very transformative impact.
That's a
Uh,
beautiful title for a book, Dancing with Illness.
yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's a great. It's funny because as I'm sitting here and talking to you, and I can see your image on the screen. Um, you've just got the light is dancing around the room and on your face, which is beautiful. So it's kind of going in flow with your words. Um, it's been such an honor and pleasure to talk to you, and I could talk to you really for hours. I'm, so deeply grateful, as I'm sure so many people are, for the work that you're doing, the awareness that you're spreading, and just your courage and your grace in dealing with this. Throughout the years, and obviously what you're going to be doing for humanity on a greater level. And you have all my support and respect, Edward. And what I'd like you to do is to share the website details now so that people can contact you if they wanted to work with your foundation, come, as somebody who requires help, or even just in other ways to be able to support you. Yeah.
Mhm. Exactly. So the foundation is thrivefoundation.org.uk.
How do you
And
spell that? So
so
you can spell it out for them.
HRIVEFOUNDATION
Thrivefoundation.org.
.org.uk.
Okay. www.thrivefoundation.org.uk.
There's all the information on the website about upcoming activities, what we're doing. People can sign up also through the website and already get a list of resources. Uh,
Yes.
the site, and we'll be putting out a calendar of events for the coming 6 months very soon. And there's some events happening tomorrow. So if people are in London and want to attend, there's some free events to kind of celebrate World AIDS Day today, but also tomorrow something called Positive Affirmation Day, which is kind of the other side of it, which is a celebration of life and community and creativity.
Beautiful.
Got a creative afternoon happening and an open mic
Where are they happening, Edward?
happening near Exmouth Market in a place called the Three Corners Centre.
Okay, beautiful. And you've also got another site, haven't you, which is where you do a lot of personal training for people, which is also on a pretty physical level, because I know you keep yourself fit. What is that website?
It's not really personal training is something I used to do. So it's
Okay.
transformational mentoring, a
Mhm.
work called alignment, which is inviting people to connect to their spirituality in whatever form or shape that takes through movement, through the breath, through meditation, through shamanic journey,
Yeah,
for them to kind of really transform their life by accessing these deeper parts of themselves. And that can be found at edwardpike.net. I run workshops in London. I run retreats. I live in Crete, so I run lots of retreats in Crete. I do online programs. I've got one starting in January, which is the combination of all these last years of learning and work and channeling a lot of this work from different places, and I'm putting it into a program called The Path of the Conscious Hero, and it's really about, you know, we've lots of us have done so much spiritual seeking and we know so much in teaching, and this is really about putting that into practice to create massive change on a personal and collective level. So that's starting in January, and there's two different groups, two different levels that are going to be starting and running parallel.
beautiful,
But that's
beautiful.
edwardpike.net, and you can find that and videos and meditations and free stuff
Yeah,
as well.
wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and for, raising our awareness. And it's been an honor to speak with you.
Really appreciate
Sending you much love
it.
and have a beautiful rest of the year over Christmas. And I hope that next year will really open up many, many doors for you to be able to spread the very powerful work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.